Okay, so today on the bench I have a transmission out of a 2007 Toyota Tundra, and this is the AB60F. This is a four-wheel drive. And what we'll do is just go through a highlight video. This actually is my first one that I torn down, and it's pretty busy in there. On this transmission you have a total of 8 sets of clutches. You have 4 driving clutches, which is C1 through C4, and you have 4 brake clutches, which is B1 through B4, and you have 4 one-way clutches, or 4 sprags. So we'll go through all of those. I did do some research last night and took a bunch of notes down so I get all the names right and everything. The problem with this was it really didn't move that great. It was towed in, and when we got the transmission out, we had a problem getting the converter out. We had to take a couple of screwdrivers and pry it past the front seal because the pump bushing is welded onto the converter neck. Now this is the second time that I've seen this. I repaired for a shop up the block from me a 2000, I think it was a 2006 Lexus IS250, and that has the A960E, which is also a 6-speed, and that's the smallest of the family of 6-speeds. There's like the A760, 761, the AB60, and the 960, and the 960 is the smallest one, and this AB60 is the largest one. Though the gear trains pretty much, are the same, but it's just larger in scale for the bigger cars. And this also is the one where it's the terrible setup with the pan bolts. It has the 12 pan bolts in it, and most of them would break. But what we did here, I managed to get only break 4 of them, and the rest came out okay. So with the transmission on the bench, it's much easier, of course. So what we did was got the acetylene torches, and we heated up. I got the gasket out of the way and exposed a little spacer, and we also heated on top. And I'll tell you, as soon as it got hot and the aluminum expanded, they spun out, but the spacer was still stuck on there, but at least I didn't break the bolt. I didn't break the bolt when they were spinning out. I can only spin it out so far before it started bending the pan up. So I just did them all together a little bit, and eventually the pan came off. And they were still like stuck. And this was in the pan, so I had a plier, and then I used just my small electric gun just to try to break it loose, and I still broke the head of the bolt off of this one. So, I mean, it's a terrible, terrible setup. So I have searching for some bolts, and the spacer should come new in the overhaul kit, which I'm also waiting for. And then, of course, I'm going to put them back with Never Seas, and certainly try to keep the moisture out of there for the next person that may drop the pan on this thing. So, what else on this? Also the input shaft drum, this is the C1 and the C4, and that, I'll show you those fictions. That thing is totally fried, to the point where I just ordered another drum, because I can get the steels from my supplier, but then I got to get snap rings and pressure plates, and if there's wave steels on this thing, but everything is so fried you can't even tell what's what. Would all have to come out of the dealer, and I'm sure it's all selective, and just easier to get a whole nother clean drum setup to use. Molded pistons. Molded pistons are very expensive. There's 3 of them. They're about $100 each. So I spoke to one of the guys I use for hard parts, and he says, and I got the pump from him too. The pump is very nice, and he says the drum is perfect, it's clean. you know, you can use everything in it. All right, so let me get a little closer, and then we can start with what the problem was. I'll show you the problem and what's bad, and then we can just start going through the transmission. And also this AB60, which I also want to show you. I just got to grab this stuff so I don't forget. This is the only 6-speed in the family of the 6-speeds that actually has 2 harnesses right next to each other. And just this small harness is for the SL2 solenoid. I'm honestly not sure why they did that. And this also has 2 temp sensors, kind of like the A750. I have the function of those sensors written down, and then the rest, of course, are the solenoids. All right, so let me get a little closer here and start by showing you the pump. I have my replacement pump, but nothing was really local. The banner kit, which consists of the kit, overhaul kit with all the clutches, is coming from out of state. This is coming today. The banner kit's also coming today in the converter. I have to find out who has that. All right, so let me get a little closer here, and we'll just go through it. It's like a highlight video. I like to do that for the first one that I tear down, so I can kind of get familiarized with the transmission. So when I get another one, and I don't know, it seems like these pump bushings spinning out may be a common issue, because this is the second one in a row that I've had. Then we can do a full teardown video. But it's pretty busy in there. Again, you know, I mean, there's between a total of 8 sets of clutches in this thing. What else? Okay, so I guess that's about it. Let me get a little closer and we will get started. Okay, first here is the pump, with the inverter. You can see that thing is totally shot. And here is the torque converter with the bushing that I cannot even move it out. So that's on there pretty good. But I do have my replacement pump, which is a very nice clean pump. Even the bushing looks good. Here's my replacement pump. Okay, gears look good. Pump body looks good. And the stator. You know, on the there's only really one pump, of course, for this AB60, as there is with the other ones. And I needed a pump for that A960, and the first one I had ordered came incorrect. And then I started doing some research online, and then they started talking about a casting number, which says over here T1. So I was doing some research as like a T1, a T2, but I mean the AB60, the pump is rather large, so there's really only one. This is 8 inches across here. But getting the, you know, when I spoke to one supplier, you know, the guy thought they're all the same, but they're not all the same. So you just got to be careful. I got the A960E pump I bought actually off of eBay, and it was a nice pump. It came in, it was the correct one, and they were specific with the T1, the T2 casting number. Okay, so here is the C1 and the C4 clutches. C1 is the forward, or maybe I believe the 1, 2, 3, 4, but it's still considered forward, and C4 is considered the coast. So let's see. Okay, so this is, I think honestly the only reason why this moved is because a couple of these are, you know, stuck together, jammed together. So those are the C1, and here's the other snap ring, and these are the C4. These aren't as bad, but they still are bad. You know, I would have to get snap rings, and I think it's just easier to get the whole drum set up, and this way I can also use the pistons that they're coming with, and I'll save this whole setup. Alright, so that's that. And since we're talking about those clutches, let's look at the drum. Alright, I did clean the drum up. The drum, you know, was pretty fried, so I cleaned it up on the inside. You do have a seal in here, and you have your 4 seals out here. This is your setup inside that drum. Both pistons, here's the balance piston with the springs. Both pistons are molded. This is the C1 piston and the C4 piston. Of course, you know, I was watching a webinar on this transmission. There's really not much out there. And of course, you know, you should change the pistons every overhaul. And these pistons are $100 each. And in the other drum, which is the C2 and C3 drum, which you'll see in a few minutes, that's just a balance piston. And I don't think they sell them separately. I think it's only in a kit. It's either a banner kit with pistons or it's a piston kit. I don't think you can get them separately. Okay, so that is the C1, C4 clutch drum. Okay, now let's take a look at the C2 and C3. And the C2 is 4th, and C3 is a 3rd and reverse. Oh, also in this as part of this clutch hub and spray for the clutch drum there with the C1 and the C4, this is the considered the F4 spray and a clutch hub for the coast clutch. That also goes with that input clutch drum. Okay, so this setup here is similar to the U660 on how this works. There's a piston on the back and it pulls the drum to apply the clutch. So here is the C3 piston and return springs. So that actually sits on there, and then you put the snap ring on. You know, that sits back here. Alright, and then so this is the C3 drum here, and we're gonna talk about these 2 drums in a moment. I just want to show you the setup in here. Alright, here is the C2, then you have your springs, and then this is the 3rd molded piston, the balance piston here. Okay, now, as far as these drums go, these drums kind of have to be lined up, and let me explain to you what I mean by that. This tab here, there's a few of these tabs. I'm hoping you can see that. There's one here, here, here. Okay, when you put these 2 drums together, let me just turn my light on. When you put these 2 drums together, you have to line up this drum with these here. You see the little notch cut in it, and like this one doesn't have any, and this one does. All right, so you got to line those marks in the C3, or those tabs in the C3 drum with these when you put these together. Okay, so you line it up, slide it down, and it'll go right in. Okay, also, Also, you have notches cut out here, you know, like 4 of those. And you also have to line those up with these in order to get the snap ring in. Okay, so that, see, that's in and it won't spin. So you have to line those up and then the snap ring will fit. All right, so you gotta just make sure all that gets lined up. All right, and this is the C2. The input speed sensor reads the C3 drum. This is the C2 drum. You got a couple of tabs here, but it really doesn't matter where they go. And then the apply piston for the C3. Here's the frictions here for the C2 and the C3. All right, also, you put the first set of clutches in, and then you put the snap ring in, and then you put the other snap ring in, and then you put the other set of clutches in, and then this will sit on top. So, you know, the first set of clutches will stack up regular with the pressure plate on top, and then when you put the other set in, because the drum gets pulled down, they'll get stacked up the other way, and then this will go on top. Put the snap ring in and then it pulls it down. Okay, so that is that. Here. Right in the bottom of the case, your reverse piston and springs. A little bit of a pain to get to, but I got it. Here is the output shaft. The output speed sensor reads the part here, and you have a bunch of washers, or bearings I should say, that go, so you want to make sure you don't lose any of that. This actually goes onto the case, and then you put the rest in. Here's the rear part, the rear, I guess the intermediate shaft I should call it, which will go into the rear planet there. And this sprag is that is, I believe, the F3 sprag. Okay, so this really can't come out, but, and then you have a clutch hub here, and I'll show you those frictions. And those frictions are the B4. Okay, so with these, let's see. Okay, so this plate, the thick plate, is going to be the bottom plate. And then you stack it up, and then you have another, it's like a stepped plate, and that is going to go on top with the step facing down. So it'll end up just like that. All right, these really aren't that bad. These are like the low reverse. Okay, and now these here, those are These are the B2, and B2 is 6th gear. All right, so with this one, you stack it up. You got to line the apply hole up into the case, and then there's going to be a couple of seals that go down there to seal that. And then this will sit in, this goes on, and then you stack it up, and then the last is the pressure plate, which you'll line up with the springs, and then you got to get the snap ring in. Alright, then I have the apply piston for, what's the next one, is the B1, which is 5th. That's this here, and again, got to line the hole up. I'm going to show you the case with all the seals. Okay, that's this here. Now really just the C1 and the C4 frictions got fried, but definitely doing a banner pit in this thing. And then the B3, which is second brake. That's those, and I gotta still take this apart. This is what holds this down, so I still gotta pull this apart to change the seals on it. And again, you line this up, the apply hole, and the case for your seals. And these are the clutch hubs for the C2 and C3, and then you have a sprig on top of that, and that is the F2 sprig right here. It turns one way and locks the other. And then the F1 sprig is within this gear train right here. Here's the F1. And then this is the gear train here. Little sun gear, planet, you got a washer or a bearing race. This will come out. And the planet here. There's a valve body and all the solenoids. And you know, if you have a bad solenoid, the most confusing thing when ordering this stuff is you'll hook up your scan tool and it'll say, you know, shift solenoid to electrical, shift solenoid B electrical. And then when you go to order it, these usually have to come out of the dealer. And when you go to order it, they have a totally different name for the solenoid. They might call it solenoid, you know, 3-way shift solenoid number 1, but you know, the best thing to do is when we're ordering a solenoid, especially from the dealer, it has to do with a Toyota or a Lexus, is we have a printout. We have them fax us a picture so we can point out the solenoid. And then I think there actually is, I have access like the TSBs and stuff like that through the program called Mitchell On Demand. And there's actually a TSB, or in the TSB section of identifying, because everybody knows it's such a problem, is identifying the solenoids when ordering them from the dealer. So that's how we normally go about it, because what it may say on the scan tool is completely different from what Lexus or Toyota is going to call the solenoid. All right, so this is your valve body. And you have the two temp sensors that go in here. Here and here. Okay, so near the manual valve, temp sensor number 1 is near the manual valve, and the function of that is hydraulic, to control the hydraulic pressure for smooth shifts. And the number 2, near the solenoids, that is shift timing. And also, if the transmission is overheating, this is the one responsible for turning on the overtemp light, or maybe setting the code, or there probably maybe an AT overtemp light on the dash. Its job is to do that as well. So I'm going to be opening up this valve body eventually. I'll probably do this maybe like on a Saturday when I'm here alone, so I do not get interrupted. And here again on the harnesses, I'm going to show you the case. This is again the only one that takes two harnesses. Here's the linkage that I took out. Now I elected to take this whole thing out as one, is because a lot of times you try to get this nut out, it's going to break. All right, the one that I just had here, the Lexus that I just had, that actually happened. So one of the things I had to do, which I did make a video on, replacing the pump and replacing the linkage, taking the valve body off, putting it back on, and replacing this arm with a new washer and nut. So had a feeling that this was probably going to break, so I just elected to take the whole thing out, and I'll just put the whole thing back like this. All right, so let me get the case up here. Okay, so here's the case. Output speed sensor, input speed sensor. This is a typical speed sensor that goes in the side of the case. All right, now, turn around. All right, so this is a blank bolt here, and they say that this is a fill, and over here also could be a fill, but I think that one of course is much easier to get to. And on the pan, all right, you have your drain here and your check plug here. But you know, you can also, when we were doing drains and doing drain and fills on these, I have a pump that pumps the fluid in. You also have to pump the fluid in here too, and we were also filling it right through here. So you basically just fill it, you know, until it comes out, and then you cap it, you start it, and then you fill it again. So the pan got a little bent out of shape, so, but I think it's something that, you know, we can certainly fix, so I don't have to replace the pan. Just the bolts are the problem. So that's the pan there. And again, your drain and your check here. All right, so in the case, you have your accumulators, and you have a drain back here. Let me just raise this thing up so you can see. Okay, this is your drain back. Typical Toyota drain back. You got a spring, and you got the plastic piece in a bowl there. All right, then you're gonna have seals. Remember I said to line up those apply holes? They're each gonna go here, and they each take a seal. Okay, these are the three. And one of them, the one that goes on the bottom, is a little longer. All right, so looks like they look like this. And then also you have these that go in here. All right, you have your accumulator pistons, you know, typical accumulator, look like that. All right, and your two harnesses, I believe the smaller harness just with the SL2 is going to go here, and the other one is going to go here. And then of course when you get this together, you can air check here, you can air check the upper ones through here. And I drilled out and put coils in, 1, 2, 3, which came out good, and then one of them didn't come out so good, so I'm going to put a nut and a bolt in, which is fine because it'll fit. And all the rest, I put the 6x1 chaser through just to make sure those threads are good, and we're going to load it up with never sees when we put this back together. And here is the tail housing. Of course, your transfer case will bolt to here. You got a couple of linkage bolts here that get weathered like the pan, but this one was okay. This one broke, but I managed to, drill this out perfectly center, keep drilling it larger and larger, and it got to the point where I can see the original threads, and I just took this is 8x125, I ran it through, and I saved the original threads and put a bolt in it. Let's see what else. I think that's about it. Let me just give you a shot at the filter. So, if you're working on these things, they got a solenoid code, and it's the AB60, especially like in a Tundra. Just be very careful because, when you got to drop the pan on these things, you know what's going to happen. This is the filter. It's held in with 4 bolts. So the one I think that I had, the one I have the video on, I think like 8 bolts broke. So, and that solenoid, I think the solenoid's like $300, so I had to charge them to drill the 8 bolts out. The solenoid and oil and stuff like that, I think ended up coming out to probably like $1,000 or something like that. So just be careful. When these things come through, I think this AB60 is the only one with this style pan. Just, it's a very, very bad setup, and if you do get them out, just make sure you load it up with the never sees. Alright, so I think that's about it. What I can probably try to do also, I'm going to try, because I do want to be alone when I do that valve body, I'll probably film that. Alright, so I guess that's about it on this 2007 Toyota Tundra with the AB60F transmission. And we found that the pump bushing, again, it's the second time I'm seeing this, welded to the converter neck. And from that, the fluid leaked out, and I guess they kept driving it, obviously, because they totally fried the C1 and the C4 frictions. Versus the Lexus that I did. I think the guy saw some drops on the ground and he immediately stopped driving it. I know the guys like in Queens or something like that, he didn't even want to drive the car to the station where his family member works, which is up the block from me. He had it towed, so that was very smart on his end. They pulled it out, and the only thing it really needed was a pump. They put it back in. I had him bring it here. I wanted to give everything a once over, and I double checked the fluid level for him, and actually the car worked very nice. Alright, so highlight video on the AB60. Thank you guys for watching. Have a great day, and we will see you next one.